welcome everyone to another one of our webinar sessions, A Day in the Life of. We are very excited to welcome Dr. Jinesh Ganda, who is the physician for the Springboks Sevens men's team. Welcome, Dr. Ganda.
Priya, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be on this webinar.
Okay, fantastic. For all of our participants today, there is a little thing that you can click if you have any questions for Dr. Ganda. So please feel free to share any comments or queries that you have during the session. So Dr. Ganda, let's get started. Let's start with, what did you have to study to get to where you are today?
Okay, so I studied medicine, so did my MBBCH at Wits University. Sure, I finished that up in 2012. After that day, we had to do our mandatory internship in ComServe. So finished that up, community service in 2015. And then in 2016, I did my master's in sports and exercise medicine through the University of Cape Town. I finished that up in 2021. And that's sort of how I became involved in sports medicine, and I suppose how I now call myself a sports physician. But again, through sort of that career path, things are changing a little bit in sports medicine at the moment. So just as your orthopedics, radiology, internal medicine all runs through the College of Medicine, which is sort of the broad umbrella of all the specialities. Sports and exercise medicine actually got accepted as a formal specialty in 2020, the year of COVID. And over the last 2 or 3 years, the council has basically been putting everything in place. And we actually a bunch of us managed to just get our applications through at the end of October, where we now are hoping to get accepted into that college. So the landscape of sports medicine is changing a little bit at the moment, whereas previously it was medicine, you sort of had to have your medical degree to get into your master's. It might start running through sort of the traditional speciality where you do registrar time at a state university, but that's maybe sort of 4 or 5 years away. I mean, at the moment, it is more the masters that you sort of hone your skills within sports medicine.
Okay, that's very interesting. We're definitely going to get into that a little bit, but let's move on to the whole, you are where you are now. So if you could take us through, what is your average day like? What is a day in the life of Dr. Jinesh Ganda like?
So it's always it's a bit of a difficult one, purely because I've just got a couple of things going. So I guess I've got a clinical arm as well as a research arm going at the moment. And then when I say clinical, I've got the rugby, which is with the Springboks Sevens. And then I've got my own private practice where I see primarily only sports and exercise medicine related patients. And then obviously I've got the research side going as well. So a day in the life of me with the Sevens, it's very much run by a schedule. We sort of start at about 7 o'clock in the morning. I do my morning medicals from 7 to 8. We often have a medical meeting with all our coaches and full medical staff just to get the coaches sort of up to date as to where everyone is injury-wise. And then the guys would have either 1 or 2 sessions on field. And at that point, I need to be on the field as well with them. Just in case any injuries do happen, we can attend to the injuries and then manage the injuries back in my office. So that usually runs to about sort of 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And the guys that have a gym session, again, usually stay in the gym because anything can happen. But yeah, I'm generally pretty much on call 24/7. That's why I've always got my phone close by, because I've always got either coaches or players looking for me. So it's one of those where I'm constantly in contact with all the players and the coaches. And then again, it's sort of, so I fortunately don't travel with the team. That's just sort of how the World Rugby has structured the Sevens tournaments, in that at each tournament, so like we had Cape Town Sevens, Dubai Sevens, the guys just got back from Perth Sevens now. Each tournament has a fully staffed medical team that either stays or that stays with all the teams in the hotel. So again, the way that's structured is all the teams that arrive for the tournament all stay in one hotel, male and female, male and female will stay in the same hotel. And there's usually a dedicated hotel doctor for the male team and the female team. So when I'm not around, I'm constantly in contact with our team physio who does travel. But if there's anything that needs to be attended to fairly urgently, the hotel doctor would attend to that, or the medical team that's at the tournament would address that there. And then again, like last week was a bit of a different week. The guys arrived back from Perth, Australia on Tuesday morning. So I had to sort of go in and do my post-tournament medicals, which took most of the day. We're just sort of seeing and assessing the damage post-tournament. And then through pretty much a lot of last week was arranging either scans, orthopedic referrals, management of injuries, and again, then communicating that with the coaches as soon as that's done, because they obviously now need to prepare for the next tournament. So that in a nutshell is what my flow of a day or a week or a camp would be. And again, we've broken up into camps. So our next camp is actually starting, or technically started today, but the main camp starts on Wednesday and we run for another week and a half, after which the guys travel off to Vancouver, where they're playing Vancouver, LA. So we're going into camp from Wednesday again, which again is pretty much once we're in camp, my flow is pretty much the same. It's medicals, training, post-training medicals, feedback to coaches. It's pretty much that's pretty much how it is. And then again, like I said, that's the rugby side. And then one day of a week, I'm at my private practice. And there I would pretty much just see patients that are booked for me, whatever, 8 to 3, 8 to 4. And I'm just at my practice seeing my private clients. And then on days that I'm not at the rugby, I'm not busy at my practice. I'm currently busy with my PhD. So then I'm busy with that, sitting in front of the computer and just trying to get some work done. So that's sort of where my days sort of run away with me as well.
Hey, you've got quite a crazy schedule there, Dr. Ganda. You need a 32-hour day, it seems, as opposed to a standard day.
I wish I could. And then,
Yeah, please continue.
No, I was just going to say, then obviously outside of that, it's obviously just spending some time at home, spending some time exercising, running, cycling, whatever it is. So then trying to fit that in as well does get challenging.
Of course, yes, I can imagine. I did notice, with the initial bio that I had a look at, that you yourself are quite active in your personal life, from the cycling and so forth. That's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Let's start with the research. You say you're doing your PhD. Which university are you doing your PhD with?
So I'm currently doing it through Wits University as sort of my primary, but it's the project is linked to the University of Calgary as well in Canada.
Yes.
So I've got supervisors sitting at Wits University, Calgary University, and then one supervisor sitting at UCT. And because it's a world rugby funded, so World Rugby is obviously the umbrella organization that manages all rugby in the world, I suppose. Everything from the World Cup to sevens to women's tournaments to sort of the under 20 level tournament, they manage everything. And this project is actually one of their projects that we're busy looking at in concussion, specifically in rugby.
Okay, that's very interesting. I'm sure. Have you just started your PhD? Are you in the middle, nearly done with it?
No. So I actually only started in about June or July last year. Just the first couple of months is actually just trying to get all the paperwork in order to try and get it through. And I've just got a deadline now at the end of, middle of March, where I need to get my proposal in. And see, I'm still in the infancy of my PhD, but it is taking up a lot of time already.
Yes, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So, dealing with sports medicine, what would you say are some of your career highlights that you've had so far?
Whew. So there's probably a couple of career highlights. I think a lot of them would probably be working in teams. So I would often also travel. So I think the one would be I was with the Junior Springboks in 2019. We played the Junior World Cup in Argentina in 2019. That entire campaign for me was a highlight. I think just the team we were with, the players we were with, a lot of those players are now playing at a senior level at sort of the Lions, Sharks, Stormers. A few of them got called up to the Springboks now during the World Cup. And we still sort of maintain that relationship where we still message each other every now and then. So it's just a good bunch of people, a good coaching staff. And then I'm also involved with our SASCOC, which is our Olympic committee, I suppose. But obviously, so they organize the Olympics and they send teams to the Olympics, but also to the smaller games like your African Games, All Africa, Commonwealth Youth Games. And I was fortunate enough to go to one of the smaller games in Malawi 2 years ago. Again, just the team I was working with was incredible. That in itself was a career highlight. And then we went to the West Indies last year in August for the Commonwealth Youth Games. And again, just meeting medical practitioners from Australia, Scotland, the UK, the US, or not the US, Canada, and just networking with them and just learning how they sort of do things. I think that in itself was a massive highlight for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, dealing with other high performance teams, I can imagine, which actually relates to a question we have. Let me just bring it up on the screen. It says, what is your experience working in a high performance team? So relating to what you just said, how has this defined you?
Yeah, working in a high performance team is, it's interesting. It's not something that you taught in medical school. A lot of what we do within sports medicine as well. So you've obviously got your clinical side in which you learn a lot of it in medical school, but when you're working in a high performance team, it's a lot of relationships that you need to sort of build and you need to maintain. Again, with your coaches, with your strength and conditioning, with your physios who you work with very closely. And I think that's probably the biggest learning sort of point that I've had. It's just how important relationships are in high performance setups. And it's sort of, I always say working in a high performance team is like working, I suppose, in any other team, except the pressures are a little bit different.
Yeah.
I always say when you work in a team, your assets are the athletes. They're the ones getting sort of paid to be on the field, and they're the ones that are getting paid to perform. And what we're trying to do is get them back on the field as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. And within sports medicine, again, and working in a high performance team, we always need to sort of be mindful of the ethics around that. In that, again, as a doctor, we took the Hippocratic Oath where we put the patient above all else, but then we've got a team and pressures from a team and organization that's saying that, listen, this player hasn't been on field, or why is this player not on the field? And you've got to sort of make tricky calls, I would say, or a lot of your calls you need to go on your gut to say, yes, he can train, yes, he can't train, or yes, he can play, or no, he can't play. So there's a lot of those pressures around working in high performance. But yeah, I think it's something that you sort of end up learning on the way as well.
Yeah. How would you compare that to the dynamic of working with sportsmen in your private practice?
Different. I mean, I was actually having a conversation today. Working in a private practice, so working in a high performance or elite team setup, our KPI is how quickly we can diagnose a patient, how quickly we can transfer that information to the coaches to say yes or no, he's available, and then how quickly we can return that player back on the field. So our decision making has to be pretty quick. We sort of need to have good networks that can, if we have orthopedic surgeons, we we need to call them and say, listen, we've got this guy. They'll say, okay, cool. He can come in tomorrow and we'll operate, and we don't lose too many days after the injury because we need to get them back as quickly as possible on the other end.
Yes.
The other thing is, again, working, I'm very fortunate to work in a sort of environment in which finances are a bit less of an issue. We have all investigations at our disposal, which is great. I also do work with UCT rugby, and even just seeing those differences where you need to be a bit more mindful of the financial constraints around investigations, MRIs, ultrasounds, all of that there. Working in our setting, it's literally just player comes in, I'm concerned about something, I say I'll book an MRI, and we get the MRI done the next day. Whereas with private patients, you often need to be very mindful of the fact that they're paying for it. That you need to consider an MRI costs 10,000 Rand, and you need to be quite, you just need to discern quite nicely which player actually, which patient actually needs the MRI, and you need to justify it a little bit more.
Yeah. Just for the sake of our audience and perhaps myself, Dr. Ganda, what is UTT rugby?
UCT, so that's the University of Cape Town.
My apologies.
UCT rugby.
Okay.
UCT rugby.
UCT
they participate in the annual Varsity Cup competition. So again, they play against Marties or Stellenbosch, Pretoria, Potch. It's just the Varsity Cup team tournament. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. We have another question. I'm just going to pull it onto stage. This is a good one. How did you manage to get your first contract as a team doctor?
Sure. This was back in 2016. So at the time, I moved from Joburg to Cape Town, and I started working at a sports medicine practice in Cape Town. And through them, found out that a team based in Wellington, Aruba, Castile, the Boland Cavaliers, were looking for a team doctor. And I guess I just put my hand up because nobody else wanted to drive that far from Cape Town. And that was my first sort of contact in a rugby team. I mean, I'd come off community service where I was working in surgery and internal medicine and working in trauma in Joburg, to now being on the side of the field, which was a massive learning curve, to go from hospital medicine to field side medicine. But yeah, that definitely was the catalyst for what sort of happened later, where I could actually build a career off sports medicine.
Okay. So to tie into that and what you mentioned earlier, that the sort of structures around sports science from a sort of academic or, sort of degree perspective, you said it's changing, or the whole environment is changing right now. If you could elaborate a little bit on that, is the formula going to be the same up until a certain point where it changes, or is it all like at what point is it changing? And specifically, how does this let me not ask you 7 questions at once. If you could respond to the first one, like at what point is it changing?
At what point it's changing, I'm not 100% certain. So the constitution has sort of been written for the College of Sports and Exercise Medicine. I think even sort of our, what would you call him, our president of the council, even they're not sure at what point it's going to change. It might happen in 5 years' time. It might happen a little bit sooner. So at this point, we're not sure. It's one of those that's just been evolving. I mean, when I got into sports medicine, I heard about this process that might take place. And obviously, 4 years later, I was like, okay, now it's finally a specialty. And then another 4 years or 3 years later, there was actually a formal logbook that came out, a formal application process that came out that they pushed towards us, that we could then actually submit, because all these steps need to actually first be ratified by the Health Professions Council, the College of Sport, or the College of Medicine, as well as the Department of Health. So it has to go through quite a few steps before it hits us, which is why I don't think anyone yet has the answer as to when it will change. We just know it will change at some point. We're just not sure when that point is.
Okay, all right. So then, considering this, where would you say, like, for students who are thinking about getting into this, like, where to, like, what advice would you give the students who want to get into this with regard to any prospective changes that might be happening in the future?
I think at this point, the only sort of pathway in is to do your masters in sports and exercise medicine, and that's been offered at Stellenbosch University. Has it's a 2-year masters with a thesis. UCT's was 3 years of coursework with a thesis. Pretoria University has a program as well. I think Fitz doesn't and Bloemfontein don't. So those are the 3 universities that offer the masters. So it's a MPhil, a Masters in Philosophy at UCT, and it's an MSc in other two universities. So I think if anyone is at that sort of cusp of finishing up, has finished medicine, is maybe in the first or second year of internship, and then sort of a year or two away from choosing which direction they want to go to, I think the masters would probably be the best option for now.
Yeah.
Sort of until we start hearing otherwise.
Okay, all right. And then for yourself, Dr. Ganda, where to from now? Not academically, but you're currently the team doctor for the Springboks Sevens. What's the plan?
Sure, that's a good question. I think I haven't quite thought about it, and the reason I try not to think about it too much is I'm getting a lot of career satisfaction out of where I am at the moment. I enjoy this sort of let's call it the job that I'm in, purely because it gives me a good balance of clinical field side. There's a lot of administrative stuff that needs to get done, so it's always a bit of a new challenge that comes to me. And I sort of also subscribe to the policy of not looking too far ahead all the time. Otherwise, you actually just miss what's happening at the moment. That's sort of the same thing that's sort of happening with my PhD. I think a lot of people, when I do tell them I'm busy with my PhD, and the first question is, okay, but what benefit is that going to be of you? And to my discredit, I asked that same question to one of my supervisors currently when I started exploring the option, and he actually gave me such good advice to say, don't try and see what's at the end of the PhD. First, try to see what you can get in the process of doing it. And I think that's where I'm at the moment. I'm just sort of enjoying all the processes that go around the job at the moment with Sevens, with my practice, with the research. So where to from here, I'm not 100% certain. I guess we'll see in a couple of years what comes at me, or where sort of life takes me after this.
I appreciate that. It's it's about experiencing and appreciating everything as you are actually on your pathway. We have another question. I'm just going to pull it up here. What experience as an intern or medical officer helped you to go into sports medicine, emergency care, orthopedics? Is there any specific way, or are you automatically in if you're accepted for your master's degree?
Yeah, again, so if we're looking at sort of those specialities, I think it would probably be orthopedics, emergency care, a bit of internal medicine would probably help you to a degree. But again, because there hasn't been a clearly defined pathway up until the College of Medicine sports medicine was formed, it really was, you just sort of enroll in your master's. Again, you take opportunities that are thrown at you, and to be honest, you learn a little bit on the job. Orthopedics is obviously a big one because orthopedics is a big part of sports medicine. We sort of see the non-operative side of a lot of the injuries. Emergency care as well. I mean, emergencies happen anywhere, pretty much. Yeah, in healthy young individuals, we've seen a lot of emergencies. So they do help you. But I think the best way, if you are interested, would probably be to, I mean, contact somebody that's in the field. That'll probably be my first piece of advice. Contact somebody in the field. Either have a chat to them, shadow them. I've had a lot of students coming to me, shadowing me either at the Sevens in Stellenbosch or at my practice in Cape Town. Shadowing, getting a feel for what a day looks like. And through there, once you start showing a bit of interest, there's definitely a lot of opportunities within sports medicine that you can start sort of getting to feel. So yeah, it's quite a difficult one. And again, hopefully once the college has sorted everything out and there's a formal training process, that would probably be a bit more relevant then.
Yeah. You speak about shadowing. If we could just go into that for a couple of minutes just before our session ends. But like, if a student was interested in actually shadowing you, for example, how exactly would they go about it in a way that you would be comfortable?
Email.
Email.
I've learned that. Yeah, if you never ask, you'll never know, kind of thing. I've had many students. I've got a student with me now from the Netherlands as well. A lot of people come through and shadow. Obviously, now I need to start being a bit more, or use a bit more discretion as to who I get to shadow me, because again, we're working in an environment that is a little bit different. But in general, usually if somebody emails me, I just do a bit of a suss out, do a call, or whatever it is, figure out how deep they are into this. I mean, if you are straight out of matric, I'd say first go shadow a doctor that's working in a hospital, kind of thing, because
Yeah.
where I am at is 10 years down the line. But if you're an intern or community service and you're sort of trying to get a feel for sports medicine, I'm more than happy to have you in. And at least there you can get a proper look and feel of what the difference would be versus between a hospital and field side stuff. Because again, with me being on the field, it's different. I mean, I go to work in shorts, t-shirt, and trainers. It's very much outside all the time. I'm never in a hospital. I'm dealing with healthy individuals, which is very different to what you need to do from first year of med school to the end of community service, which is a 9-year period. So
Yes.
you do first be comfortable with that before you start looking at something like this. Because if you base your medical degree on sports medicine, I think you're going to be very unhappy for 9 years, kind of thing.
Yeah, you've got to, sort of, I'd say embrace the whole process, but understand where your end game is, and where you're trying to get to. Okay, cool.
Exactly.
Well, we've just got pretty much a minute. Is there anything else that you would like to say to inspire the Gen Zs who are, studying, the undergrads, the master's students who would be interested in pursuing sports medicine?
I think the biggest thing for me is get involved. It's the only way if you start getting your hands dirty, that's literally the only way that you're gonna make it happen. And the second thing is just don't be afraid to ask. Email is an amazing thing. You can literally pop 50 emails a day. You're bound to get 1 or 2 replies. That's what I did for a lot of the initial part of my career, which is email and look for opportunities, and 1 or 2 bit, and that sort of has led me to where I am. And again, I think the key is it doesn't take. It's not. I started in 2016 working for sort of semi-professional teams, worked my way into a national setup. So it doesn't happen overnight either. It takes a good couple of years before you sort of get to the good one.
Okay. All right. Well, our session is about to expire, so I just want to take a moment quickly to say thank you very, very much for joining us on this webinar. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we wish you the very, very best with the Springbok Sevens and our boys.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Just thank you for